JYD in Mid-South, Hulk Hogan, WWE. Who was more over?
Wow. It's like it's almost an equal thing because JYD, and again, there's a lot of guys that didn't like Bill Watts and the way he promoted. But let me tell you something. Bill Watts is brilliant. He knows his wrestling, and I mean, I don't know one wrestler that couldn't squabble about payoffs at sometimes, like or think they deserved more or what have you. But what Cowboy Bill Watts did is he was the first promoter to feature as one of his top stars a black guy.
Right.
Nobody else had ever done it, and he couldn't have done it in a better place. Louisiana and Mississippi, Arkansas, not Oklahoma, but yeah, and the thing, JYD, okay, and I tell people this all the time. I said the one thing that you can't teach anybody is charisma. You either have it or you don't.
Right.
And if you do have it, then you could probably build on it a little bit. But if you don't have it, I mean, you could go out and have a match and do everything right. But if you don't have any charisma, if and it's kind of like, it's just like, oh, okay, they had a match, so what? But when JYD would come out there and stroll out to the ring, and he grab the rope and wiggle his knees a little bit, howl like a moon, howl at the moon like a dog, and get in the ring. I mean, he had it. You put him on a microphone, he was unbelievable on a microphone. And that's the other thing is wrestling's not all the wrestling. It's like there's I've seen a lot of guys that were really good in the ring, but you give them a microphone and and that's where a lot of times a manager comes in. A
Right.
lot of times a promoter will take a manager, somebody who can really talk, and give that manager to a wrestler who needs the help. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so, but Randy didn't need that kind of help, but JYD, oh my gosh. I remember he said he was this is, and he and I he was my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. And we traveled together all the time. And then I turned a bad guy, on
Right.
him. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And I mean, this is back when heat was heat, and a lot of people believed it. And so
Right.
I told Grizzly Smith was uh, Bill Watts's like agent. He was the guy that showed up at all the towns, told everybody what they were doing that night, and if they needed a draw on their money, he'd give it to them and let you know what you were doing. And so this was in New Orleans. Well, I told well I here's what I told uh, Grizzly. I said, I am not driving my car to New Orleans the first time I wrestle dog. And he said, why? I said, because it'll be on blocks when I come out. I mean, they took their wrestling real serious down there.
Right.
So anyway, he says, okay. He says, just ride with me. He says, I'm neutral. So I rode with him, and so JYD and I go out there, and we have this great match, and obviously I take over on him, and I'm punishing him, you know, just beating him down, whatever, and finally he makes the big comeback, and he wins. Everybody's happy, and so I go back and I'm showering. I come out of the shower. I'm starting to get dressed, and old Grizz comes walking to the door. He's got both his hands on his hips, and he said, just looking at me, shaking his head. I said, what's wrong, Grizz? Just shaking his head. Something wrong with the match? He said, no, the match was great. I said, so what's wrong? He said, they slipped my tires, all of them. They slipped all of his tires. I mean, that's how serious the
Wow.
fans took it just because I rode with him. They slid his
Wow.
tires. And I said, if it had been my car, which was a Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, I said, I wouldn't have had any tires.
Wow.
But it was, but yeah, I had a great time working with the dog, and they just and he, you talk about somebody good on the mic. I remember he said one time, he says, DiBiase, you can't come like a cabbage, all head, no rear. You got to bring some to get some.
That's great.
Wow.
How is it like with Hulk Hogan though? What level of over was he when you were in
Hulk
there?
was good. I mean, the first I met Hulk Hogan the night he made his first appearance in Madison Square Garden. This was when he just started. It was, and this was my first trip to New York, which I wasn't one of the big stars. But I was the guy he worked with. His first match at Madison Square Garden was with me.
Right.
And I remember Vince Sr. was still alive, and he says, we're really trying to get this guy over. And that was going to be my last match in the New York territory, and I was leaving. And so I went out there and I put him over like you know, I made him a star. And so when I got back, Hulk thanked me. I mean, he says, I man, I can't thank you enough. And he says, I owe you one, buddy. I owe you one. And Vince Senior again. And I said, thank you very much, and I'll be happy to come back again sometime. And then fast forward to and I can't remember what the year was. But I think 87 is when I went back.
Mhm.
Was it 87 when I went
Yep.
back?
Yep.
Went back to New York, started as the Million Dollar Man thing.
Correct.
And I remember the first night I saw Hulkster. I mean, I had been there like for a few shows and whatever, even he just didn't happen to be on those shows. And he came up and he said, shook my hand and smiled and said, and winked at me. And he said, it's payback time.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He didn't forget. And of course, we had some great matches and what have you. And I made a lot of money with him too. So, uh, you reap what you sow.